I wasn't supposed to be back in this town. After what happened 20 years ago, I promised myself I'd never return. But life has a cruel way of circling back, and now, as a single father to a 10-year-old daughter, I had no choice but to seek out the only pediatric clinic open late at night. My daughter was burning up with fever, and her breathing had grown shallow. I carried her in my arms through those automatic doors, desperate. What I didn't expect was the look on the nurse's face when she asked for my name. She froze completely, something in her eyes, fear, recognition, maybe guilt, flickered. Just before she stammered, "Take her to room 4, I'll get the doctor." She disappeared down the hallway, but I wasn't just worried about my daughter anymore. There was something else in the air. A name shouldn't change the color of someone's face like that. My last name carries weight here. And not in a good way. As the hours stretch on, and the fever refuses to break, I begin to realize that this clinic, this nurse, and maybe even the doctor, they know something. Something about my daughter. Or maybe, something about me. The past is no longer buried. And this time, it's burning just as hot as her fever. The rain had been coming down hard all evening, soaking the streets and painting everything in a dull, silver haze. I drove with one hand on the wheel, the other on my daughter's forehead, trying to ignore the panic that had been rising in my chest for the past hour. Emma was burning up. Her skin felt like it was on fire, and her eyes, usually wide and curious, were now dull, unfocused. She whimpered every time the car hit a bump. Hadn't been back in this town since I was 17. I swore I never would be. But when the fever hit and the small clinic near our house said their systems were down, I had no choice. I drove back to the place I'd run from. Back to the ghosts. The sign outside the building hadn't changed. Still flickering. Still crooked. St. Mercy Pediatric Care. A joke of a name. If you knew what had happened here 2 decades ago. I carried Emma inside, cradling her close as if I could absorb the heat from her tiny body and cool her down. The waiting room was empty. Sterile. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of antiseptic hit me like a wave of memory I didn't want. Then she appeared, the nurse, late 30s, maybe early 40s. Blonde hair pulled back tight. Professional. Until she asked for my name, I said it like I hadn't said it in years. Reynolds. Matthew Reynolds. Everything about her froze. Her fingers stiffened mid-typing. Her eyes locked on mine. Then something shifted in her face. It wasn't just shock. It was something else, something colder. She stood up abruptly. "Take her to room 4. I'll get the doctor." "No, please." "No, don't worry." Just a look that felt like a closed door slamming inside her head. I didn't have time to ask questions. I followed the hallway to room 4 and laid Emma on the examination table. Her breathing was shallow now, her lips tinged with blue. I held her hand and whispered to her, my voice shaking more than I wanted to admit. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. No doctor. I stepped out into the hallway. Empty. I walked toward the front desk. No nurse. I was about to call out when I heard voices coming from behind a closed door. 2 people whispering. Fast. Urgent. He said his name is Reynolds. R. You sure it's him? I'm telling you, it's his daughter. We have to call. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and both voices went silent. The nurse was there, along with a doctor I didn't recognize. Middle-aged, dark eyes, pale face. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days, or years. They both turned to me like they'd seen a ghost. "My daughter is burning up," I said. "And you're whispering behind doors. I need help. Now." The doctor nodded, clearing his throat like he'd forgotten how to speak. "Yes. Of course. Bring her to room 7 instead. There's better equipment there." "Room 7, I stared at him. "You told me room 4. His eyes flicked to the nurse. Then back to me. I think it's better this way. Better for who? I didn't argue. I just scooped Emma back into my arms and followed them to room 7. The lights in this room were dimmer. The equipment older. I laid her down, trying to stay calm. As the doctor began examining her, I noticed a folder sitting on the desk. It was already open. My name was on it, not Emma's. Mine. I picked it up, and what I saw made my stomach turn. There were medical notes dated from 20 years ago. My birthday. My mother's name. And something else. A red stamp, ineligible for treatment. Classified case. I didn't even hear the doctor until he spoke behind me. Mr. Reynolds, there's something you need to know about your daughter's fever. I turned slowly. She's not just sick, he said. She's reacting to something in her blood. Something we haven't seen since you. My throat went dry. What do you mean since me? He glanced at the nurse, then back at me. You were part of an experimental group years ago. You don't remember because it was sealed. But we do. And whatever was done to you, it's waking up in her. My hands went numb. Emma started convulsing, and all I could do was scream her name while alarms started flashing red across the room. The alarms were deafening. Red lights pulsed across the room as the machines monitoring Emma's vitals began to scream. I grabbed her shoulders, gently, trying to hold her still. Her back arched off the table, her small hands clenched into fists. And her mouth opened in a silent cry. Her fever wasn't just high, it was climbing into numbers I didn't even know were possible. The doctor shouted something to the nurse, who was already moving, locking the door, drawing the blinds. My heart pounded so loudly I barely heard. Anything else? What the hell is happening to her? I demanded, my voice cracking. The doctor pushed a syringe into her fore. If we don't get the reaction under control, her organs will start shutting down. What reaction? I was already standing, ready to grab Emma and run. She just had a fever. You said she's reacting to something in her blood. What does that even mean? The nurse looked at the doctor like she was waiting for permission. He gave her a nod, almost imperceptible, and then she said it. Matthew, your daughter's not just sick. She's a carrier. I blinked. A carrier of what? Silence. Then the doctor spoke slowly, carefully. 21 years ago, your mother enrolled you in a private medical trial. You were 2 years old. She was promised money, free healthcare, and a way out of debt. What she didn't know was that the trial involved synthetic genome restructuring. They altered your DNA. I felt like I was listening to a science fiction script. Altered what? You're saying I'm some kind of experiment? You were. But it didn't take. Or at least, that's what they thought. You showed no signs of change. You moved away. Your mother died. The records were sealed. I shook my head, trying to make sense of it. But what does this have to do with Emma? The nurse spoke now. Your daughter inherited the altered gene. But in her, it's not dormant. It's activating. Activating, the word landed like ice in my chest. I looked down at Emma. Her skin was flushed with a strange, almost luminous red. Her pulse was still erratic, but her eyes were open now, wide and terrified, glowing faintly around the edges. Not metaphorically. Literally, she needs to be taken to the original facility, the doctor said. They'll have the technology to stabilize her. Maybe even reverse it. Facility? You mean the people who did this to me? Who didn't tell my mother the truth? She signed the paperwork, he said, coldly. It was legal. She was desperate. I snapped. You preyed on her, and now you're telling me you want to hand my daughter over to the same people? The nurse's face softened, just for a second. They'll come for her anyway. They're monitoring cases like this. If we don't contact them, they'll find out some other way. And when they do, they won't ask your permission. I looked at Emma again. She was quiet now, breathing hard but stable. For the moment. But the light in her eyes hadn't faded. What happens if I say no? I asked. The doctor hesitated. Then we keep her here. We do what we can. But if the mutation continues to activate, she could become unstable. Physically. Mentally. Meaning? She could hurt herself. Or others. Without even knowing. A long silence stretched between us. I reached down, touched her hair. She didn't flinch. She just looked up at me with those flickering, frightened eyes, and I saw myself in her. My blood had done this to her. I stood, turned toward the door. I need to think, I said. The nurse moved to block my path. You can't leave. I stared her down. Try to stop me. She didn't. I walked out into the hallway, heart pounding, ears ringing. I needed air. I needed time. That's when I saw them point. 2 men in black suits. No badges. No visible weapons. Standing by the front desk, whispering to the receptionist. They hadn't seen me yet, but they were here, already. I backed into the shadows just before they turned. The hallway light flickered above me. Of course it did, and for a second, I felt like I was 17 again, hiding from something I didn't understand but knew I couldn't face. But this time it wasn't me they were after. It was Emma. They stood like they owned the space. Not like visitors. Not even like officials. Just certain. One of them wore thin glasses and held a leather folder against his chest. The other was broader, clean-shaven, with a face that didn't seem capable of emotion. They didn't glance around. They weren't looking for directions. They knew where to go. The receptionist pointed toward the back wing. Where Emma was. I didn't have a plan. I only had instincts, and those were screaming at me. I turned back down the hallway, sprinted past room 4, past the nurse's station, and into room 7. Emma was still on the bed, sweat dripping down her temples, her breathing shallow but even. The glow around her eyes had dimmed, but not disappeared. The nurse looked up from her clipboard. They're here already? I nodded. 2 of them. Black suits. You know who they are? She hesitated. That was answer enough. They don't care about Emma, I said. They care about what she is. What she might become. The doctor stood in the corner, arms folded, unmoved. You can't protect her from them. Watch me. I pulled the 4 from Emma's arm. She winced but didn't cry out. I wrapped her in the blanket and lifted her again. She was lighter than I remembered. Maybe it was the fever. Maybe it was the fear. The nurse stepped between me and the door. If you run, they'll trace you. You won't make it out of town. Then help me. Her jaw tightened. She looked at the doctor. He said nothing. She sighed. There's a back entrance through the old records wing. It hasn't been used in years. You'll need a code to open it. Give it to me. She scribbled it on a piece of gauze and stuffed it in my pocket. I paused. Looked her dead in the eye. Why are you helping me? She looked down at Emma. Because I saw the footage. From the original trials. What they did to you, what they did to others. And because I wasn't always a nurse. I used to work for them. I stared at her. Then why stay here? Because I was waiting, she said softly. For someone like you to come back. Before I could ask what she meant, a voice boomed from down the hallway. Mr. Reynolds? The men were closer, too close. The nurse turned off the room's light and opened the maintenance door. I slipped through, clutching Emma tightly against my chest. The hall beyond was narrow, lined with old filing cabinets and flickering fluorescent lights. The air smelled like dust and mildew. My heart thudded with every step. Behind me, I heard the door open. Footsteps followed. Slow. Deliberate, "We're not here to hurt your daughter," one of them called out, voice too calm. "But you need to stop. Before she does something you can't undo." I didn't respond. I turned the corner, found the keypad where the nurse had said it would be, punched in the code. A loud clicked, I shoved the door open and was hit by a wave of humid night air. The alley was empty. I ran halfway down the alley, I heard the door slam open behind me. Footsteps again. Faster this time, but I was already at the car. I slid in, cradled Emma against me as I started the engine. My hands were shaking. The tires squealed against wet asphalt as we pulled away, disappearing into the night. Emma stirred in the back seat. Her voice was weak, almost inaudible. "Daddy, I'm here," I said quickly. "You're okay. We're okay." She opened her eyes. The glow had returned. Stronger now. Brighter. Her pupils had narrowed into something not quite human. "Daddy," she whispered again. I heard them. In my head. I stared at her through the rearview mirror. "Heard who, baby?" "The men in suits," she said. "They're not here for me." "Then who?" "They're here for you." For the first 20 miles, I didn't speak. The highway was dark and mostly empty, stretching like a ribbon of silence between me and everything I thought I'd buried. I kept glancing at Emma in the rearview mirror. She was lying down, her face pale but calm, the faint glow in her eyes flickering like a pilot light. Every now and then, her lips moved as if she were whispering to someone I couldn't hear. I didn't ask again. I wasn't ready to know. I had no destination, just distance. But distance doesn't matter when they know who you are. What you are. Around mile 30, I pulled into an abandoned rest stop, tucked between pine trees that looked more like shadows than trees. I killed the lights, killed the engine. The silence that followed was a pressure more than a peace. I leaned my head against the wheel. They weren't here for her, that's what she'd said, they were here for me. I looked down at my hands. I thought about every time I'd gotten sick as a child and how quickly I'd recovered. The way my bones healed faster than doctors expected. The way I never caught the same virus twice. I thought it was luck. Now I wondered what had been growing inside me all along. Emma stirred. "They're getting closer." I turned to her. "How do you know?" She sat up slowly, blinking through the shadows. "They talk when they're near. I can hear them. Like a buzzing. But not in my ears. In my blood." My chest tightened. "What are they saying?" She shook her head. "Not words. Just hunger. Like they want something. Like they've been waiting." I got out of the car and paced. I had to think. I had to find someone who knew more than I did. I needed answers, not whispers. That's when I remembered the nurse's words. I wasn't always a nurse. She'd said she worked for them. She knew more. Maybe she hadn't told me everything. I pulled out the gauze she'd written the code on. There was something else scribbled on the edge. Tiny numbers. Coordinates. I checked the GPS. It led to a cabin. Middle of nowhere. 40 minutes north. I woke Emma gently, and we hit the road again. By the time we reached the cabin, the sky had started to lighten. A bruised shade of purple streaked the horizon. The structure looked like it hadn't been touched in years, boards on the windows, moss creeping up the sides, but something about it felt preserved. Intentionally hidden. I knocked once. No answer. I pushed the door open. It wasn't locked. Inside was dust, and silence, and something else, records, boxes of them, stacks labeled with codes and dates. I flipped one open and saw photographs of children. Charts. Lab results. Names. Dozens of names. Then I found mine, Matthew Reynolds. Code, R172. Status, failed activation, but there were notes added in red pen. Recent ones, a reversal possible through progeny. Monitor next generation. I sat down hard. Emma wandered in, holding a stuffed bear she found on a shelf. They came here once. I looked at her, she touched the bear gently. Not the men in suits. The others. With white coats. They were scared. They burned things before they left. She walked to the fireplace and reached behind the brick. Pulled out a flash drive sealed in plastic. I took it, feeling like my hands weren't entirely my own. He didn't have a laptop. But I'd find one. Somewhere for now. I pocketed it. Then I saw the wall behind the bookshelves, covered in a hand-drawn map. Circles marked in red. Dates. A pattern to the towns. The hospitals. All connected, all radiating from one central point. St. Mercy, I turned to Emma. Why would they come back to where it all started? She looked at me, voice low. Because that's where the others are waking up. Others? She nodded. I'm not the only one. Outside, the sound of tires crunching gravel snapped my head toward the window. A black SUV pulled into the trees. We weren't alone anymore. The SUV idled just beyond the tree line. I ducked behind the curtain, heart pounding, counting the seconds. Emma stood near the back wall, still as a photograph, her small fingers clutching the plastic-sealed flash drive like it was sacred. She wasn't glowing now, but something in her had shifted. She was watching me differently. Not afraid. Not fragile. Almost like she was waiting. A car door slammed shut. Then another. I scanned the cabin, looking for exits. Back door, rusted. Side window, nailed shut. We were boxed in. Emma tugged at my sleeve. Don't run. Emma, they don't want to hurt you, she said. They want to control you. She said it like it was a fact, not a guess. Not fear. Certainty. How do you know? Because I can feel what they feel. And they think you're the key. I knelt in front of her. The key to what? To unlocking the rest. Before I could press further, a knock echoed through the cabin, slow, deliberate, hollow. I stood, shielding Emma behind me. Mr. Reynolds, a voice called. You're not the only one who survived. I opened the door. IT wasn't one of the men from the clinic. IT was someone else. Mid-40s. Tall. Tired eyes. A thin scar ran from his jaw to his neck. He wasn't wearing a suit. Just a jacket. Faded jeans. A look I recognized too well, someone who had run for too long. My name's David, he said. I was part of trial group 1. Same year as you. You don't remember me, but I remember you. I didn't speak. There are more of us, he continued. Scattered. Quiet. Some stable. Some not. Most of us thought we were anomalies. Mistakes. But now, he looked past me, at Emma. She's not a mistake. She's the beginning of something new. What do you want? I asked. He sighed. Not to take her. To protect her. But you need to understand, they're not going to stop. The facility you escaped from, the people behind it, they've spent decades tracking us. Erasing us. But she's proof their experiment worked. Proof they can't control. She's 10, I said. She's just a child. No. She's something they couldn't manufacture again. She's a second-generation mutation. Which means whatever she becomes, they didn't plan it. And that terrifies them. I looked back at Emma. She wasn't glowing now. But her eyes were still impossibly still, too quiet for a child. Like the storm was waiting behind them. David handed me a phone. Preloaded. 1 contact. No number, just a name. Safe house. We move often, he said. If you decide to join us, call. But do it soon. She won't be safe on her own for long. They'll keep coming. He turned to go. I stopped him. Wait. Why now? Why are you showing up now? He paused. Then looked over his shoulder, because the others are waking up. And someone needs to teach them how to survive. He left without another word. That night, Emma slept in my arms. The fever had broken. But the glow returned each time. She dreamed. I watched her and thought about the nurse, about the sealed records, about my mother signing those papers in desperation. She had no idea what she was giving them. What she was leaving in my blood. I used to think I'd been robbed of a normal life. Now I know I was given a weapon I never asked for. The flash drive is still untouched in my pocket. I don't know if I'll ever open it. Some truths might not be worth knowing. But one thing is clear now, they didn't just change me, they made me, and through Emma, they made something more, something they'll never control. So let them come, we're not hiding anymore.